what's up? Welcome back. Today I'm doing a painting talk through, just rambly video basically. I'm going to be painting a kiwi on this Lazy Susan, and mostly I'm going to be talking about how to create boundaries around your creative practice. This is important if you're using social media to market. This is important as an artist, and specifically why using social media as an artist is so different from arguably most other professions, and why boundaries are so important when you are selling and marketing your creative energy, right? It doesn't always fit. There's not a connect. I don't know if you've ever struggled with how to connect what you're doing creatively to an audience, but this is kind of a talk through for you if that's where you find yourself right now. And then just a heads up, you might hear click clacking in the background. I have my little man, my almost 5-year-old, playing in here. So if you hear click clacking, I promise it's not like studio rats, it's a child. So anyways, thanks for being here, and I'm excited to start this video. All right, for my reference photo, I'm using a kiwi. I think I literally Googled kiwi slice, and it's like it's watermarked, but it's like a Getty image of a kiwi slice. So yeah, I'm just gonna be using that to kind of eyeball what I'm doing. Okay, so I'm starting off with titanium white, cadmium yellow light, and a little bit of oxide green, and I'm just painting it in the center of the Lazy Susan to start off with. Okay, so the first thing I want to talk about is why boundaries are so important for artists and creative practice versus being an influencer or a business, right? And the first thing I think of is the way in which we make art doesn't always fit the way social media, or like specifically Instagram, wants us to produce content, right? So Instagram says, make something every single day, make it splashy, get it on the explore page, take no breaks, and just produce content, something new, original, every single day. That's really hard for a creative person. I feel very creatively abundant, and that's really hard for me. The truth is, a lot of painters and artists don't create like that. You know, you spend maybe a few months at a time absorbing a lot, and then you have a really high month of output. Some artists don't create daily art. Like some people, you know, will spend months on one graphite drawing, and the idea of trying to put out one thing every day is just unrealistic. And I find that a lot of artists get burnout, they get really disillusioned by the creative process and having to put it on Instagram, and it just feels hollow, and they end up not making anything for months and weeks, and maybe you did build some momentum and now you can't keep it up and you lose that momentum. And what do I do? How do I do? I'm a creative person. I'm not a business. I'm not selling coasters. I'm not an influencer. My creative practice doesn't fit into a daily routine. I feel you, first of all. Even as someone who, I do tend to fit the daily routine model pretty well, if I don't plan a little bit, I find myself getting very, very, very bogged down by everything. Just an update, I'm adding phthalo green and more oxide, and I'm creating kind of an ombre effect. It looks like a hot mess right now, but I promise it'll make sense later. And so one thing I want you guys to think of with your creative practice is I want you to go through and imagine what would a perfect creative practice look like for you. Don't get overwhelmed by the idea of perfect. Think about, in a world where you don't have to sell art, you don't have to use social media to market, what would your creation look like? Would you create in the morning? Would you create every day? Would you create for a few months at a time, then take a month or two off? Who would your audience be? Who is your ideal audience if you didn't have to sell? Like, who would you want to talk to? I find it really important to be crystal clear on this, okay? I think it's really important to know 100%, even if it's unrealistic. I think it's important to know with certainty, in a perfect world, how would you make art, okay? Write it down, be really clear on it. And then the other thing is, of course, not to be the bearer of bad news, but I'm assuming if you're here, you already know this. Likely your perfect creating, habit or whatever doesn't fit the daily practice mold. Or maybe it does, but not, it's not like a piece of art every single day that's gonna do amazing on the algorithm, right? Whatever, it doesn't fit somehow. Something is disconnecting. I think as a creative person, it's your job as much to make art as it is to figure out how to mitigate the two. So how to bridge the gap between the way you wanna create and the way Instagram wants you to create, right? Or YouTube or TikTok or whatever. And so I think, hold on, just an update. So this is kind of where we're at with our kiwi. Looks a little crazy, but I'm gonna try to blend it. And if you're making this along with me, remember there's a line of seeds here, so this doesn't have to be perfectly blended. But yeah, it's important to kind of create boundaries. So the next thing I want you guys to think about is, okay, boundaries around what? What's a boundary? Well, boundary is just a line of delineation. It's where one thing stops and another thing begins. So for boundaries for an artist, I want you to think about, so now that you have your crystal clear creative practice in your mind, what are you willing to do? What are you not willing to do, right? Do you want to work 2 hours a day on marketing, or do you want to spend a couple hours every week on marketing? You know, if you spend less time, you have to be okay with getting a little less traction, but just being clear before it gets to that point where you need to post something. One thing I find a lot of people do is they don't think about it. They're just kind of responding to their day. They're making art, and then all of a sudden they're like, oh, I have to post something. And, you know, you end up kind of selling yourself short when you do that. You know, oftentimes for me anyways, if I don't plan a little bit, I find that I have nothing to post, or that I want to make something really fast and it doesn't always feel genuine. It's just a disconnect, right? Have you ever had that feeling where you need to post something, you have nothing to post, and you kind of tailspin, right? We want to avoid that. And so the first thing I would recommend you do is to have boundaries. Okay, Sarah, but boundaries around what? What do I have a boundary around? So I think of it like you have a creative engine, right? So it's a thing that you do that you could do forever. So when I asked you a minute ago to think about your perfect creative practice, that's kind of what you're protecting. It's the part of you that without having to sell or market, you could do forever. Like, what could you paint forever, right? And it's not to say there's no audience, it's just you don't have to think about selling or marketing. And then once you have your creative engine, then you need to make sure that the parts of social media that don't fit you don't encroach on that. So another way I think of it is you have two parts of you. So I always think of it like I have Sarah the artist and then Sarah from marketing, and I keep them very separate, okay? So how do you do this? So basically you just don't allow the part of you that is aware of Instagram and how to get on the explore page and all that stuff. You don't let that person sit down in your chair or at your easel, right? You just say, I'm going to create with abundance and what I enjoy, and then later I'm going to clock out and let Sarah from marketing figure out, how do I take this information? How do I take this painting? How do I take the photos of my work in progress? How do I take all of that and best use that to market myself later, okay? When I started to do this, when I created that delineation, I found that my creative practice just kind of took off. I no longer felt stressed. I no longer cared what people thought about the art I made. I made exactly what I wanted to, and I let myself deal with it later, right? So that's like my biggest little nugget of advice. Separate the two. Don't let marketing you sit in the easel chair, okay? Got it? Be clear on that. Okay, so the other thing that you need to be aware of is daily content. Does this mean you need to make original painting every day? No, I tend to lean towards that, but my medium is really fast drawing. I tend to enjoy playing around. I overthink, so if I don't publish something, I'll like tinker with it forever, and it ends up being kind of counterintuitive for me, but the more I can just let things go into the universe, the better and more liberating my creative practice feels. But I know that's not for everyone, right? Not everyone works like that. Some people enjoy fine-tuning and they know when to stop, unlike me, who does not know when to stop. So just an update on the kiwi. This is again what we're working with. And hold on. This is what we have. Looks a little bit of a hot mess, but I'm just laying the groundwork out. I'm now going to paint the seeds. So I'm going to mix a dark muted green and paint those lines, and then I'll add seeds later. Okay, so one thing that's important to know about Instagram is that it's an app that is meant to appeal to the viewer and not the content creator. So Instagram, their number one thing is they're mining people's attention. The fact that they have your attention is what they're then selling to companies who buy ad space on the platform. And you as an artist, it doesn't care about the way you make art. It doesn't care about your feelings. It doesn't. That's not, it's a business, right? So then you have to know, what are you dealing with, right? So sometimes to make things seem less scary and daunting, it's really good to know what it is you're up against. Okay, so this is specifically to Instagram. This of course applies for all different platforms, but I found my stride with Instagram, so that's what this information is going to be about. So what is it about Instagram? So Instagram likes consistency over everything. Ideally daily or multiple times a day. Like if you notice, like bigger companies like Glossier, for example, post multiple times a day on their main feed, and they also post in their stories constantly. Like I don't think they ever have an empty story bubble because they're a company and they have a social media team to post to Instagram. You are likely a lone artist, so that may not be possible for you. So you need to look again at your boundaries. What are you willing, how much time are you willing to spend on social media? And you need to figure out how exactly that's gonna fit into what you do. So if you can't make an original piece of art every day, first of all, don't worry about it, that's normal. What can you post and at what frequency? So coming up with a content strategy is really important. So if you don't post a lot and you don't make a lot and you don't want to spend a lot of time on Instagram, maybe you post every 3 or 4 days. And then maybe you keep your stories updated. You always have something in your stories, right? And that seems doable for you. That's great. Stay consistent. Don't have 2 weeks in a row where you post every day and then have 2 weeks where you don't post anything. You're going to lose momentum. Instagram doesn't like that, and they're going to inadvertently punish you, right? They're going to make it harder to reach even your own audience, which stinks. So find a consistent schedule. For me, that's daily, and that's usually having a few stories kind of at any given time. I also do interactive things in my stories, and I find that if I do that once a week-ish, it really boosts my algorithm, because Instagram sees it as, oh, these are people making meaningful connections. They're going to spend more time on the app when they're meaningfully connected to creators on the app, right? Again, they don't care about you, they care about the audience. So it's important to know what you're up against. That being said, I think it's important to go out and look for different ways that other people on Instagram are connecting with their audience. Oh my God.
I love you.
So this is kind of where we're at. We've got some lines going on. It's starting to look more Kiwi-esque. So one thing I want you to think about is what are things that other people are doing on social media platform that is appealing to you. So a little exercise you can do is you can go around, spend a day on Instagram or an hour or whatever, and figure out what other people are doing that's exciting to you. Then write those down, make it a huge master list. And then later, when your brain has reloaded and you've gone on a walk and had lunch or whatever, then think about all of those different techniques that people are using and how you can fit what you're doing into those techniques. So whether it's Instagram lives or Facebook groups or Pinterest boards that you can share with your audience, or Q&As in your stories, just all the different ways people can connect, hashtag movements, anything, think about it. And then go through and find out what would work for you. So if you don't want to post original content every day, you can still post regular content. Just think about different strategies you can use to connect to your audience. Because also another tip as an artist is the more that you connect to your audience, the more likely you are to get sales. And I suppose at the end of the day, we're all wanting to be able to sustain ourselves with our art, right? I assume, again, that's why you're here. And if not, that's great too. No worries. Then you're probably a little less stressed than a lot of us. But yeah, you just need to be, open to ideas of how you can use different features to help yourself. Reels. If you make one painting, but you take photos of your process, you take photos of your palette, you take photos of your brushes, you take photos of, different aspects to what you're doing, your inspiration, your reference photos, whatever, and then you take a picture or a video of what you're doing. You can crop it into a reel. You can have content for later. You can have a picture of your brushes that you then attach an inspirational quote to. You have a ton of content and you've created one piece of art. So you're always wanting to think about different ways you can use what you're doing to then feed into your main feed, right? Like feed, I say that a million times, but it's true. You're trying to always look for byproducts of what you're creating that then you can use for different ways to market so that you can have that consistent upload schedule so that you don't get buried on Instagram as much, right? So you have your boundaries, you have your creative engine, you know what you're doing, that's sustainable. Go ahead and make with abandon and just make what you love and enjoy. And then take all the things that you do, all the little pieces, and then try to find a way to plug that into the algorithm, right? So now you have a whole lot more content. I always think of this concept as beauty in the byproduct. And what that is it's, what might seem mundane to you, it's like your walk to your studio, or it's, for me, I get a lot of inspiration from the grocery store. And, you know, if I was really struggling for content, I would take photos while I was grocery shopping and make them artsy and beautiful and say, listen, like, I'm inspired by all these fresh fruits and vegetables and, you know, the bakery and things like that. And, you know, if someone's a really big fan of mine and they're interested in why I paint foods and what's up with that, then seeing little pictures of my grocery store might be interesting to them. You know, what seems mundane to you is probably interesting to your super fan. Don't write yourself off. And so always be on the lookout for different ways you can take what you're already doing and make it into content. So it doesn't mean, you know, I'm not contradicting myself. I'm not saying don't, you know, marketing Sari is not in there in the room. I'm just saying take photos, look at what you're doing. You know, just be aware that everything you do is beautiful and special. And then later, when you're trying to post something, or you say, okay, it's 2 o'clock on a Tuesday, I have to post something. You have all of these photos and all of this inspiration that you can then draw from and make different kinds of content that aren't always an original piece of art, right? It's just hard to do for people. So something else to keep in mind. Okay, so now I'm painting, I have this part. I haven't painted the seeds yet, but we're starting to look kiwi-esque. To be honest, I'm like a little bit intimidated by the seeds, so I'm gonna go ahead and paint the edges. So I mixed up this nice orangey brown color, and I'm still just using the same brush. The orange has a lot of red in it, and if I use the green on the brush, it kind of mutes it, so it's not like bright orange, it's more of like a brown orange, if that makes sense. So I'm just gonna paint the edges. Okay, so Sari, I got it. Don't let marketing Sari sit in the seat, but always be looking and thinking about your inspiration. Okay, I got it. So now I have all these photos in my phones and these caption ideas and inspirational quotes and different things that I like. I'm still having a hard time getting traction on Instagram. Okay, so here's a couple tips. I'm actually making a full workshop out of it where I'm including all my tips and tricks and even more like exercises and stuff to help you figure out your boundaries. But I'll give you guys a couple that I think are the most helpful. So for me, 2 things that I did that really, really helped me was figuring out hashtags and also figuring out what time of day to post. So there are apps in the App Store. I think if you type into the search bar best time of day to post, you'll get a whole like list of them. I think the one I use is like $1.99. It's like one-time pay, and basically you type in your social media information into it, so Instagram, and it calculates when most of your viewers are on the app, and that gives you the best time of day. For me, when I was smaller, I only had like about 2,000 followers. I did this, and it told me the best times of the days to post, the best times of the days to avoid, and I was already making daily content, and then bam, I did this, and all of a sudden I got all this traction, right? And I like to think of it like traction because it wasn't like a boost that was unwarranted. I was putting in the work. It just maximized what I was doing. So time of day to post, I was really religious about how I did it. I followed it to a T for 2018, all of 2019, and a little bit of 2020. But then I will say the advantage of having a larger account is that once you get to a point, you don't have to be as diligent because you have so many eyes on you. It doesn't mean you can't, you don't do anything and you post whenever. I still post daily. But I find that getting that momentum when you're a small-ish creator, figuring out the best time of day can be really helpful. So I did that, and then the other thing I did was I really maximized my hashtags. So one thing I did was I divided up my hashtags into groups of 3. I had 3. So Instagram gives you 30 hashtags, right? And I had macro hashtags, which are like art finder, Insta art, painters on Instagram, daily painting, etc. The hashtags that have billions of tags under it. And then I had my micro, which are like more specific to my niche. So acrylic landscape painting, acrylic still life painting. They still have a ton of people following it, but you ruled out a ton of people at this point, right? Because you've gotten a little more niche. And then the last 10, I do personal. So I have like my name, like Sari Shrike, Not Sorry Art, and then any other small movements that I'm interested in, or like, just anything that's more niche to what I'm doing, or movements that, a smaller creator has created and that you want to be part of, okay? So you want 10 of each, roughly. You can slightly obviously augment it, but you want to have a variety of hashtags, hashtag sizes, and then save it to your notes, have it there, and use it fairly consistently. I have, because I have so many different styles and subject matters, I have one for still life, for botanicals, for my memes, and things like that. And they're not all different, but like some of them are different. They're just more relevant to what I'm posting. And between those two, the hashtag trick and the time of day, I really found a lot of success from doing that. But again, I had already been doing the daily content. So not that there's like a perfect order to do things, but I find that with artists, the most important thing is to really carve out your creative practice and then use all the marketing tools and the tips and tricks and hashtags to expand your audience. The thing is, you can use all the tips and tricks in the world, but if you don't have a firm creative engine, you don't have boundaries around your practice, you're just gonna get burnt out and it's not gonna be fulfilling, and you're probably gonna start making art that you're not super proud of because you're just making to keep up with the algorithm. And I've been in that, not long. It was, early that I realized that like that wasn't fulfilling and I was gonna burn out and it wasn't fun. But when you're making stuff just to be relevant or just to make daily content, and it isn't coming from a place of joy and love, it can be really exhausting. So I really encourage you guys to use these tips and tricks, certainly. And if you already have a creative practice and boundaries, then great, those are 2 tips for you. But if you're just starting out, put in effort into really carving out your creative practice and then use the tips and tricks once you get your footing, if that makes sense. That's definitely like my biggest advice I would have for like a new painter. Okay, so if you can see, painted the edge, lovely brown color, and now I'm just going to touch it up on here. And the other thing I want to talk about is trends, right? It's fun on Instagram to play around with trends and stuff, right? I love it. I think it's really fun. I make like essentially 1 painting a day, and so for me to play around with trends is no big deal. I already make content. It kind of helps me fill content gaps. Like let's say I'm working on big things for a show and I have like a smaller series I'm doing, but I have a day where I just need to, make something small and fun. It's always nice if there's like an international hot dog day or, there's a meme that's going viral and I already paint memes and like, let's be silly with it. I love hopping on a good trend. I will say trends are like desserts, right? They're fun, use sparingly, but if your whole account is nothing but desserts, like you will rot from the inside. Okay, that's dramatic. It might be for you. Maybe your whole creative thing is like you are obsessed with trends and that's your thing. By all means, paint trends. But if you do have something else to say, be careful that you don't get caught up in trends and that's all you do. Not every trend is for everyone. Not every trend I am interested in, right? And I love trends, I love pop culture, but sometimes something will come around and I have no interest and I don't want to have to paint it just so I can keep up with the algorithm. But sometimes a trend comes along and it's a celebrity I like, or it's a visual component that's interesting to me. I'll hop on it. But again, it's like desserts. Make sure it's not everything you do. It's not nourishing to your creative practice, but have fun. So that's another thing, another tip if you're wanting to create content. Be aware of them and pick and choose. And again, boundary work, make sure it's not overextending yourself to keep up with them. And the last thing, the thing I want to get across with all of this, as I paint the seeds, the last part of this. All right, so now I have the seeds on, and the edge on. I'm just going to smooth over some more green, kind of make it more, I don't know, to fit together more. Something inside me says this isn't done yet, but it's close, right? Okay, so another thing I want to talk about is the reason why I think social media marketing is different for artists versus other careers. It's because there's so much information out there, right? For as far as social media marketing. There are people who are content creators who their whole thing is catching up with the Instagram, Pinterest, Facebook, whatever updates, translating that into layman's speak, and then publishing it on blogs and on YouTube. So it's their whole job, right? The information is out there. I didn't get a degree in marketing or business. I did art and graphic design. But and I'm as smart as the next guy, but if I can do it, you can do it. I think the issue I see with artists and why I see artists struggle so much with marketing themselves on social media isn't because the tips aren't out there, they can't find them. I'm sure they can. It's because they don't have boundaries around their practice and they're not keyed into their creative engine. I think when you have those things, it's like the analogy, you can teach a man to fish and he can fish for life, or you can give him a fish, right? If I just got on here and handed out 20 tips and tricks I use, sure, it would be helpful, especially to some people who kind of already have their practice together. But I think that to the majority of people who are struggling, who are artists, what you need to hear isn't tips and tricks. It's how to create a sustainable practice and then plug into those tips and tricks and how to look for them yourself. So again, creating that practice, creating those boundaries, and then go to Google and Google Instagram updates. Right now, this is October 2020. Google that. Look at what comes up. Go to YouTube. Same thing. Put that in. See what comes up. I'm sure you can find information. And that's exactly what I do. I just, every few months or when my engagement starts to go down, I'm like, I wonder if there's been an update. And I look it up, and it isn't rocket science. And I sort of, again, I have those boundaries in that creative engine. So if there's an update, I sort of think to myself, do I want to keep up with this update, or am I willing to not hop on this trend or this update and maybe not grow as fast, but I'm protecting my energy? You have to make those choices. That's what you have to balance. I'm not a coaster company. I'm not an influencer. I don't have to hop on the trends because I have a creative practice to protect, right? So just something to think about for you guys, something that I keep in mind when I'm sussing out what I need to do on Instagram and how I need to approach my practice. But yeah, it's going to be different for everybody. So I'm mixing up a nice green. I'm using some phthalo and some more of this cadmium yellow. Trying to make a really beautiful, vibrant green to throw in here. Yes, so it looks like this. And the other thing I want to get to is, I know I've said this in various forms throughout this video, but it's okay if you're having a hard time with social media. It's not for everyone. You just have to carve out your groove and find out what you need from social media. Not everyone needs 200,000 followers to be successful on Instagram, right? And with an artist, you're selling your work. You don't need to make all the sales in the world to make an impact, right? You just need a couple key sales a year. You need to find licensing deals. Everyone has a different strategy. Everyone's creative practice is going to be as unique and tailored and individual as the artists themselves. That's just how it works. So what might work for someone, like for me, daily content, original artwork almost every single day is going to be the last thing that works for someone else. And for someone else who does a haiku every day and documents their walk to work, my walk to work is through my backyard, and I can't write poetry for the life of me. That isn't going to be a good strategy for me. So, be as creative with your marketing and content strategy as you are with your art. That's the nice thing about being an artist, and the fact that I'm speaking to a group of creators is what it's like to have a problem and then come up with a solution. So do just that. You don't have to be a prisoner to social media. Okay, so I think I'm gonna do, this is where we at. Lots of layers. I think I'm gonna do one more green right here on the outside and call it done. Also, I have light coming at me. I have a skylight in here. Let me show you. Ooh, beautiful. It's great, but it creates for some wonky lighting when I'm filming videos, so bear with me. But I'm almost done with this and I'm super duper excited. So I'm mixing some Jenkins green, which is a really nice dark green, and oxide and a tiny bit of phthalo. It's easy to get carried away with phthalo, so just a little bit. A ton of cadmium yellow, a little bit of cadmium orange just to pull down that phthalo a bit, and even more yellow. So now I have this color. Ooh, yeah. But anyways, as I finish this up, feel free to write any questions you have in the comments. I'm planning on doing a lot more of these painting talk-through videos and sharing what I know and learning more from you guys and learning what your specific problems are, so that I can see if I can help you or reach out to other people who do know what they're talking about, and just make this not sorry art, whether it's YouTube or Instagram, a community where people can come to learn and ask all the questions, and there's no gatekeeping, and it's just a bunch of artists doing the best they can to make a career out of something that's hard to make a career out of. I just want to create a space that's helpful and something that I wish I would have had when I was starting out. I felt like I kept messing up, and it would have been really nice to, you know, have more people talk about things openly and give advice and say what they struggle at and what they excel at, and just, I don't know, more transparency, I suppose. Okay. Let's see. A little kiwi fruit. I think we're done. Let me look over the reference photo one more time. I'm going to do a little lighter layer. Oh, say that 3 times fast. Right in the center. Okay, now I think we're done. Actually, I think we're done now. Voila! Ooh. Okay, I would spin it, but it's kind of... Hey, that's so fun! Oh my gosh, that was so fun to make. Let me make sure I like it. I think, okay, I said I was done. I think I'm gonna add one more thing. This is like the story of my life. When I say to you guys on Instagram, I'm like, oh, I tend to overwork things. I'm not like playing. I very much overwork things. So I'm gonna add a little bit of ultramarine blue to white, because I'm using a highlight just on the seeds, just a little bit. Now I'm just adding tiny little light green, like not quite highlights, but almost. Guys, this is bad. This is always what I do. Just ever so slightly. Okay. How many times do I have to say that? I'm actually done. Okay, woo! The highlights were a nice touch. She's beautiful. Look at that yummy texture. I love acrylic paints. But there it is. The finished kiwi. I hope that was helpful. I hope you guys learned some tips and tricks. I hope my ramble about social media was beneficial. But I guess the takeaway is just remember you're an artist. Your presence on social media will be different. It'll have things that are harder for you to do because of the way you produce content. And there will be things that are your superpowers because you're an artist and you're aesthetic and you're working in a visual medium. So take it as you will. I wish you the best of luck. Always feel like you can message me and DM me. Even if I don't get back right away, I try to read everything and I try to incorporate commonly asked questions into the content I put out, okay? So I'm not the best at getting back, but I'm listening. I'm here for you. I will try to get back. Please leave your questions in this, in YouTube. I don't have a huge following on YouTube, so it's easy for me to get back to people here. Little hack if you want to talk to me. But yeah, thank you guys so much. I hope this was helpful, and have a great rest of your day. Thank you. It's a booby break and air conditioning. It's a booby break, y'all.